Get the inside track on 20 top business trends for 2020 from Joel Block. Joel's insights bring Wall Street to your street so you can profit from the inside in 2020. Just text the word TREND to 72000. That's 72000 and download your free copy today. Grab your phone and get the inside track on business trends that affect you and your business. Just text the word TREND to 72000 for your copy now. This is Profit from the Inside with Joel Block. Insights to give your business the inside track. And now, here's your host, Joel Block.
Mentioning the name Amazon strikes fear in the hearts of business executives and company owners around the globe. But is it possible to make the 800-pound gorilla a part of your success strategy? To answer that question, John Ghiorso. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, man. So you are operating in a world where people are just running around terrified, the Amazon effect, the whole thing, and somehow you've got some kind of a mechanism that helps companies to leverage the beast instead of fearing the beast. Want to tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. So I own and operate a company called Orca Pacific. We're a full service agency with an exclusive focus on Amazon. So we've been around for about a decade. We have over 100 clients. We work primarily with consumer product brands in a myriad of different categories. And ultimately, we're set up to make sure these brands are maximizing their potential on the Amazon platform while minimizing any downside impact, things like channel management, margin protection, et cetera. So, we fundamentally believe that you can play with Amazon, you can be on the platform, you can maximize the potential there without having to fundamentally give up anything else as far as it relates to the rest of the channel.
There are a lot of issues here, and we'll go into hopefully a lot of stuff.
Sure.
So you help them manage their distribution, their channel. Do you help them get on and sell? What part of the process or all the parts? And could you just kind of tell us what those steps are, what the parts are?
Yeah, for sure. So we break our business down into a couple kind of big segments. So first one is front end. So by front end, I mean anything that's generating demand, improving conversion rates. So advertising, marketing, merchandising, building out content, SEO, pretty much anything and everything that's going to drive product sales on the platform.
Now, are we talking about selling things to Amazon or being a third-party seller?
Both.
How does it work?
Both. So there's multiple ways to engage with the Amazon platform. And I use this term platform, which probably gets overused in general, but Amazon is a retailer, but they're also a marketplace. And that's why the term platform is kind of a better one. So to answer your question, both. So we work with them as a retailer, i.e. brand is selling product to Amazon, they warehouse it, they then sell it to their customers. We also work with them as a marketplace. So
let's talk first about them as a retailer. Do they function like Costco, where they actually buy merchandise, they pay for merchandise, they warehouse the merchandise, they ship the merchandise, and they take the risk of that merchandise and then they take ownership of it? So they have one channel that works like that, right?
Yep. And that's referred to typically as first party or Amazon 1P, Vendor Central, all sort of synonymous terms. But yep, very similar to Target, Walmart, Costco, any other big retailer.
So there are companies that just sell their wares, and that's just one of the distribution channels that they have. They might sell to these companies, they might sell to Amazon. Yep. When companies are selling that way, and they know that Amazon they're not always the lowest price, but they tend to have good pricing. How do they price, or how do you recommend that they price to other retailers who are also moving their goods?
Yeah, so the way that this works on the retail side of Amazon's business is they basically price follow. So they'll price match any quote unquote external competitor. So to them, that's any other e-commerce retailer, Walmart.com, Target.com, et cetera. They'll always price match. So Amazon isn't going to lead on price. They're not going to quote unquote discount, but they will always have a competitive retail. So there's a lot of things that can be done to sort of mitigate downside impact from a channel management perspective. It's frankly pretty complex. Most of the time, the easiest way to answer this, most of the time, by the time your product is on Amazon and being discounted, it's too late. Like most of the effort actually has to happen upstream and is more related to distribution strategy than it is necessarily managing what's specifically happening on the Amazon platform.
Explain that a little more. In other words, when you say it's already too late, are you saying that Amazon would be like a secondary strategy for a distributor or a manufacturer? Or are you saying they might go there first? How would a manufacturer think about incorporating Amazon into their selling strategy?
Yeah. So, I think you have to look at Amazon as one of your most important retail channels. Unless you're in a very niche category, a category where for some reason Amazon isn't a big player, for the vast majority of retail categories, Amazon should be one of your top 3 customers, if not number 1, just based on where they fit in the marketplace. So then it's a matter of kind of how do you approach Amazon in a way that doesn't degrade the pricing integrity in the rest of the channel. There's a lot of different strategies. There's map policy, there's differentiated product, derivatives, anyway.
But the manufacturer wholesaler doesn't get to tell Amazon what the price is.
No, they don't.
Right.
But they do get to determine who has the product. Typically, when we see a really out of control channel issue with a brand, it usually has more to do with smaller regional retailers, distributors, other entities that are sort of muddying up the channel, not necessarily the other big retailers. Very rarely is Target or Walmart or Costco the big sort of linchpin problem in a channel management strategy. Usually it's Joe's appliance store that has 3 locations that's selling a bunch of your inventory out the back door on the internet. That's usually what's leading to significant price erosion in a channel. Not all the time, plenty of exceptions to that. But so that's when I say distribution strategy, a lot of it comes down to who are you willing to sell your product to and who are you not? A best in class example of a company who does this really well is Bose. You're never going to find Bose products discounted. The reason for that is Bose only sells to like 15 people, not people, but entities, companies. Now they can get away with that because they have a great brand and IP and everything else. But it's something that it's kind of a North Star to look to.
So do the companies that sell on Amazon frequently also have a wholesale strategy? Is it common that they're selling wholesale as well as retail? In other words, they'll sell in bulk to other companies beside retailers, to end users through some other channel?
Yeah, it really runs the gamut. There's a lot of brands that operate what's called a hybrid strategy on Amazon, which is actually where you directly as the brand operate a third-party marketplace strategy as well as a first-party retail strategy simultaneously. And then you also have in the mix oftentimes a lot of other third-party sellers, folks like distributors, resellers, other kind of intermediary companies that will also be reselling the same product. So if you go to an average top selling item in a category, you'll see typically 50 to 100 different offers for that same item from 50 to 100 different entities selling that same product on a given detail page.
When a product is labeled Amazon Choice,
yep.
What does it mean exactly?
Yeah, so it's tied to a specific search term. So if I search paper towels, there's going to be an Amazon's Choice badge for the search term paper towels. It's algorithmic. It's not like a human sitting there deciding what they think the best paper towels are. And it's based essentially on a number of factors that Amazon picks out to try to back into what is going to lead to the best customer experience, as well as what is the best product for Amazon to be selling. So customer reviews, in-stock rate, price competitiveness, profitability for Amazon factors in. And keep in mind, there's millions of search terms searched every day. So while paper towels is probably an obvious one, there's also a separate Amazon's Choice badge for recycled paper towels and recycled paper towels 4-pack and 12-pack, et cetera. So for every search term, literally, there is a different Amazon's Choice badge, and it's an algorithm determining this.
So it's not like this is our preferred vendor, we get better pricing. So it's not done that way.
It's not. No, it wouldn't scale. It was very, very like early in that program. What's interesting is that program was actually created by the Alexa team, because in a voice only communication scenario, if you type paper towels into Amazon, you can show someone 30 results, and that's an easy thing to navigate visually. You can't do that with voice only.
Voice. Well, this is going to open up another part of our discussion.
Sure.
But voice is going to be 2, maybe 3. That's it. Yep. And the whole strategy is totally different using voice than it is using.
And that's why Amazon's Choice was invented, so they could just say, okay, no one wants to have us read a list of 10 paper towel options. They just need us to choose one and say, do you want this one?
Yeah.
And that's where it started.
Tell us a little bit about the concept of channel conflict, because there is a lot of conflict in some of this stuff. And I'd like to really kind of explore this a little bit if you're okay with it.
Sure. Yeah. So, channel management, channel conflict was not invented by Amazon. It was around before Amazon, but essentially the internet and then Amazon fully leveraging the capability of the internet to sell products has created a dynamic where anything that happens anywhere will be immediately visible and essentially reflected nationwide. So, it used to be 20 years ago, if some regional retailer ran a discount, you'd only see that if you walked into that store. Today, Amazon price matches everybody, and everyone price matches Amazon. It's just a web of interconnected price matching essentially constantly. So all it takes is kind of one weak link, and then the whole market will essentially match each other. So it's a tricky thing to manage and to frankly unwind. If it's usually we say once for a given product, right? Once price erosion starts to happen, it's not impossible to correct that, but it's pretty difficult because you get into a sort of chicken and the egg, who matched who first. If Walmart and Amazon and Newegg and Target are all matching each other, who's to say who's matching who at some point? That's just kind of the new price in the market.
So, so I guess what comes to mind here is, let's say, for example, even back to this Amazon Choice thing, I don't know what companies make paper towels. I don't buy a lot of paper towels, but whoever XYZ company makes paper towels, and they pick one to be the Amazon Choice, and then Jeff Bezos, they contact somebody and say, we want you to make Jeff Bezos paper towels.
Yep.
So they use the brand to get the customers, and then they swap out the brand for the Jeff Bezos. It's like Kirkland with Costco. They offer you both.
Sure.
But in a world of voice where there's going to be one choice that's going to be put out there, if I was Jeff Bezos, I would say, I think you got to buy the Jeff Bezos brand. Sure. So they built it on the backs of everybody else, but then they're going to sell something else. Do you see a lot of that, or is that something that's going to be happening more?
Yeah, so I see a lot more talk than I actually see this happening in reality. So Amazon has 80 plus different private label brands. They're taking private label very seriously. It's a big initiative for them. But just as a comparison point, private label represents, I still think, less than 1% of their total product sales. At Costco, I think it's like 25, 30%. At Walmart, it's 20%. Target, it's at least that much. So, it's I've seen a lot of articles written about this in the Wall Street Journal and other places, but it's really still early days for Amazon private label. I don't see it as fundamentally different than what most other retailers have been doing for 30 years. Is it a competitor? Absolutely. Are they a strong competitor because they're, fundamentally at an advantage because they're coming from inside the building? Yes, of course. But I don't see that as significantly different than you're a national brand, you're selling at Costco, and there's going to be a Kirkland signature version of your product sitting right next to it for 30% less on the same shelf.
Maybe made in the same factory, by the way.
Yeah, probably made by you, actually, in most cases.
By the brand, right?
Are made by the national brand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, slap a different label on the package and there you go.
Yeah. Do you think the consumers are better off? What's your perception? We'll talk about business here in a second, but do you think the consumers are better off? Are they being better served now than they were, say, 10 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah. I think ultimately the Amazon effect has, with a few exceptions, led to a dramatically better customer experience with retail. It's faster, it's more convenient, it's cheaper, they have a bigger selection. I think that today, when I just think of myself, the way I kind of buy things I need in my life. I used to have to sit in my car and go to Target, and then I'd go to Costco, and then I go to Best Buy. And that was a solid chunk of a day, probably on a Saturday, that I would have rather been doing about 100 other things. Now, it's a few clicks throughout the week. It gets me what I need. And so, for me, has that made my life better in some small way? Yeah, I think it has. And I think it has for a lot of folks.
I'm with you 100%. If I need something at Home Depot, I need a couple cans of WD-40, but I don't feel like driving there. They just show up the next day. It couldn't be easier. The other thing is that things that are unusual, that are not easy to find, you can find them in 5 seconds on Amazon. You can save them for next time. And then you just order them, they show up. So a lot of wasted time has come out of our schedules, which is just fantastic. But the one thing that I heard you say earlier is that Amazon is for things that are generally not niched. If they're not a niche type product, then Amazon is going to just, take control and it's going to work well. Is that close?
No, I guess I wouldn't say it that way. What I was saying is, if for some reason you're a manufacturer in a category that Amazon is not strong in, then maybe they shouldn't be a critical part of your strategy. But there's only a few of those categories left. I mean, maybe tires. I don't think Amazon does much in tires. They don't do much in white goods, washers, dryers, etc. But I mean, you have to really kind of dig deep to find a category that Amazon is not a dominant player in at this point.
Yeah. So, let's talk about niches. If you're selling, there's certain things, jewelry, for example, maybe you want to go examine the piece before you buy it because it's hard to see in a picture.
Yeah.
Is that a category that would do better in a retail store?
So I've been doing this long enough where I've heard the statement, category blank will never work online because people want to touch it. They want to feel it. They want to talk to the salesperson at the store. They want to test it out. They want to try it on. They want to do whatever that verb that they need to do in physical space is. And so therefore that category will never work. I heard that about digital cameras. I heard it about office products. More recently, I've heard it about apparel and soft lines and home textiles. And every time it's proven to be, I wouldn't say untrue, because I think, yes, in a perfect world, you would be able to interact with that product. But is it worth the trade-off of sacrificing convenience, selection, price, all the things that Amazon's really good at, to be able to pick that thing up in a physical space and look at it? Most of the time, no, it's not. And that also is looking through a lens of present day technology. You don't have to take a radical leap to envision a future where augmented reality allows us to try on clothes in our bedroom virtually, in a way that is not gimmicky, but actually really works. Because right now there's some of that, but it's quite gimmicky. That allows you to see what a sofa will look like in your living room before you buy it. These are things that will really, they're gimmicky now, but I think they'll really work in 3 to 5 years. So
yeah, well, you can imagine that Amazon is well positioned to adapt these kinds of technologies. In fact, I think they have some of these things that you can test
they do.
From time to time.
Yep, they do now. And that's why I say this exists today. It's just the 1.0. It's a bit goofy, being honest. The experience is not, I wouldn't necessarily buy a sofa just because I wouldn't not measure the sofa in my living room just because I use the app to display it in AR. Let's just put it that way. It's not kind of at the end state yet.
Yeah. Well, listen, any of us that have been around for 20 years and have watched the evolution of the internet, it's very much believable that things are going to be different in the future than they are now, because we watched it change over the last 20 years, even maybe 25.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to understand that although we can't imagine necessarily what it is just yet, it will be different and it will be better because it keeps getting different and better. So,
yep, absolutely. Yeah. That being said, a lot of people have a tough time envisioning or understanding that the future will look radically different than the present. Even though we've all experienced radical change over the last 20 years, to the point where today would look like science fiction 20 years ago in a lot of ways, I still think people have a tough time realizing that things are going to be dramatically different 10 years from now.
But here's the thing. Our clients, the clients of your agency, the audiences where I speak and do keynotes for boards of directors and people that I work with, these are not your typical consumers. These are people who do understand that the world is a moving target. Yep. They do understand that there is technology advancement, that they have to stay on the curve, or they're going to get lost behind the curve. So these are people that really do get it, and they understand it. And that's what they come to guys like us for, because our whole thing, profit from the inside, it's all about the inside track. And us giving them the best, fastest, smartest ways, the best intel that we can, so that they can make decisions going forward. And that's what our whole purpose is here. Yeah. So let's talk about international just for a minute, because my understanding is, and this has recently been discussed in the Wall Street Journal and other places, that many countries are trying to lock down their space to give their own local companies a little bit of a head start, so that they don't have to compete with giants like Amazon and some of these other companies. How are you advising your companies that sell internationally about how to use Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because that's basically what happened in China already with Alibaba, right? I mean, they were certainly favored by the local government and have done extremely well, and then now are a global force in e-commerce. So that can work. My advice would be, don't really worry about what Amazon and Alibaba and Tencent and Walmart are doing internationally. Let them fight that battle and then go where the customers are. Pick if you're going to enter country X, figure out where is the customer traffic, where are the eyeballs, where are people shopping, physical and, e-commerce, and prioritize that way. Don't necessarily try to predict the future in terms of, is Amazon going to win or Alibaba going to win in Brazil? I don't know. Pick the winners when they're winners.
Listen, I'm not saying that we need to place a bet on who the winner's going to be, but if Amazon doesn't have a lot of traction in India, because India's been a very difficult place for that to happen, because they're trying to protect their own companies that are trying to evolve there. So what you're saying, does your agency help companies get placed in India on those platforms, and also in Alibaba in China and other places?
No. So we're exclusively focused on Amazon and basically focus on North America and Europe right now. There's, Amazon China, which is very small. Amazon India is actually doing pretty well. And then there's Australia, Japan, Korea, and Brazil in some small way. So anyway, we really focus right now on North America and Europe. I would say for global brands, I would establish a foothold even in those new regions where Amazon is really quite small, because there is a true first mover advantage momentum factor on the platform. So even this doesn't mean, go open an office with 15 people in that country to serve the customer, but it means at least get the products up, get basic content up, make sure it's in stock, do the fundamental pieces, which can be one person's kind of side gig if you do it really efficiently, to at minimum establish that foothold, which will serve you well 3, 4, 5 years down the road if and when Amazon becomes a serious player in that market.
How does a first mover advantage work on a platform like Amazon? In other words, it just seems like you're there and then somebody else comes along and now they're there.
Yeah.
What's the advantage? What's the momentum factor? What are you thinking?
Sure. So there's a flywheel effect that is literally coded into the way that the platform ranks products. So this is not some sort of amorphous, buzzy buzzword concept. It is an actual baked in functionality of the platform. So basically the way this works, and there's 1,000 different examples, but essentially success predicts future success on the platform. So the things that get a product to rank higher will then cause it to create more factors that then will get it to rank higher. So for example, you run a promotion, the product does well, it ticks up in search, then you get more reviews because you sold more product. It gets put into a number of automated widgets on the platform that then surface it to more people. So more people go to the product, more people convert, more people write reviews, and it continually sort of will tick up in search. So, and it's all relative, right? If a category does $1 million a year in sales and you do 700,000 of that, you're the top dog. If it does $1 billion in sales, you now along that path have to defend your number one position, and you're going to be doing 700 million, to use that same math, versus coming in when it's $1 billion category and saying, okay, now we have to kind of beat our competitors who have a legitimate entrenched advantage, because you can't just go in and get 5,000 reviews and the velocity and all the things you need to do. You can't do that overnight. It's much easier to do it earlier than it is later, because again, it's relative to what the competition's doing. And typically when a category is small, competition isn't spending as much, they're not paying as much attention, they're not doing all the things that they'll be forced to do later on. So that first mover advantage really does factor in.
Yeah, no, I get that. When you talk about that momentum, that you've got accumulated sales and you've already got some points in their system, however they rank things.
Yeah.
And that is really the inside track. I mean, that really is something that is not well known, that listeners of this show really can benefit from, which is awesome. What about the algorithms? Do they change the algorithms at will, just like Google does? And so you think you're going off to the left, next thing you know, you're going off to the right. Facebook is changing all the time. People are doing advertising strategies. They're trying really hard to make things work. Next thing you know, it's all different and the rules change. Is that happening?
Yeah, it happens constantly. The A9 team, so A9 is the search engine that Amazon uses to rank products. The A9 team is pretty much top secret. Internally, no one knows outside of that team really, and maybe the leadership, how the algorithm actually works. I mean, we know the general factors that influence it, but in terms of very specific changes, it's a bit of a black box. There's hundreds and hundreds of different variables that factor into ranking, and they're constantly tweaking it, A/B testing it, changing it. I mean, literally every hour of every day. There's two fundamental reasons why they're going to be constantly changing the algorithm. One is to do a better job of predicting what a customer wants to see and doesn't want to see. I mean, that's ultimately the logic is built from this foundational idea of try to show the customer what's going to be most relevant to them. And then two, Amazon is constantly working to prevent gaming of that algorithm. So very similar to the way Google's looking at their algorithm. There's a lot of kind of black hat tactics that can be employed on the platform, kind of hacky things that can be done. And so Amazon, those are what Amazon would consider to be against kind of the best interests of the customer. So preventing those things, trying to create a better customer experience at the same time.
Well, going back to the thought about this, the momentum, the first mover advantage, it just seems to me that what you're describing is the company that sells to Amazon has a lot to do with how successful they are, much more than I would have expected.
Yes.
So they can really help, and Amazon must incentivize those companies to help them by rewarding them with higher rankings. Because if they're getting reviews from customers, if they're making sales, if they're doing whatever it takes to make that happen, they're rewarded with more volume through the platform, I would imagine.
Yeah, the burden of success is shifted much more to the supplier on the Amazon platform versus a traditional retailer. So, if you want to sell into Target, a lot of your success is going to be determined by, does the buyer like your product? Do they think the customers will like your product? Do they, are they partnering with you? How much risk have they taken on inventory? All of these things. Where with Amazon, it's much more of an open platform. And that's a double-edged sword. It means that if you're aggressive and smart and, take it really seriously, you don't have to wait for a gatekeeper to decide, yeah, we like your product or we don't. You can just go kind of drive your own success. But conversely, it also means that you're on your own in most cases. Like, no one's going to hold your hand. Frankly, in most cases, no one's even going to answer your phone call. So it's really about, what you are and aren't doing as the brand.
It's pretty extraordinary. Are there parallels with regular old-fashioned or traditional retail? Are there stocking fees? Do they have the concept of end caps and a lot of the other retail concepts where manufacturers and suppliers pay the retailer to do certain things? Does that happen in Amazon too? Or tell us how that might happen.
It does, yeah. So there are a number of program elements at play. Those are mostly just kind of baked into the cost of doing business. I wouldn't say you really get anything for them. But then stacked on top of that, there are hundreds of different opportunities to fund merchandising programs. Most of them, just being candid, are not worth the price of entry. The biggest, most consistent, most effective driver of demand, if you want to spend money on the platform, is advertising. So advertising, versus merchandising marketing, there's a couple different properties that Amazon uses. One is search, one is display. They're programmatic. They have real data attributed. It's a much more transparent, data-driven, scientific way to approach driving demand on the platform versus merchandising, which is more, it's more the in-cap equivalent. Okay, we're going to put some pictures on the site that costs X amount, and we have no idea what it is or isn't going to do, and we don't really get much data. So advertising
it really the concept of the Amazon choice, that answer you gave us surprised me, because I sort of thought that was a pay-for-play kind of arrangement.
Yeah,
and it sounds like it's really not.
It's not. There, Amazon is there's a lot of paid placements. I mean, there's advertising, which should always be pretty transparent in terms of a sponsored tag, just like a Google AdWords result would be. And then there's a lot of merchandising, which is, kind of much fuzzier from the consumer perspective in terms of whether that's a brand paying for it or whether that's Amazon sort of editorializing and saying, hey, we like this sofa versus, well, the sofa brand paid us $50,000 to put a picture of our sofa here. Anyway, and then there's truly organic elements of the platform. The truly organic elements of the platform, it's either one or the other. They don't, things like relevancy ranking, things like Amazon's choice. When Amazon decides that a program needs to be organic, it is totally hands off. There's no way to manipulate it. I don't care if you write them $1 million check, it's not going to happen. So I guess, the good news in some ways from a supplier and from a customer perspective is there is a very clear line in the sand between those that are paid and not. So
it's an amazing company. It's an amazing thing. I mean, they've revolutionized retail in so many ways. I mean, it's much more than just low prices. We see low prices. We see convenience. We don't have to drive around in our cars and that we see, but it really behind the scenes has really changed the way that suppliers and distributors interface with retailers. It's just changed everything. So let's talk for a few minutes about Alexa.
Yeah.
How is Alexa going to really catch on and start moving product? Because that must be the long-term plan. I mean, at the end of the day, their goal is for it to be another option for input, but voice is different than typing.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually think Amazon's long-term plan is to be the new Windows. I mean, I think their long-term plan with Alexa is to be the default operating system for the default mode of personal computing in the future. I mean, it's unbelievably ambitious what they're doing. I think the move from desktop to mobile devices to do a lot of personal computing will be less impactful than the move to voice computing. I mean, again, this is, I hesitate a little bit because I know that's a kind of an out there statement, but that's my personal opinion based on what I've seen going on. So with that in mind, obviously commerce is going to be a huge part of that, but I think it actually goes far beyond commerce. I think it affects the way we do a lot of things in our day-to-day lives. So there's a couple things that need to happen before this works. really in terms of like the future vision of this. So first of all, you need to have ubiquity with the platform. So right now, the way most people engage with the Alexa platform is a single device. Maybe they have one or two of them in their house, and that device lives in your kitchen. And when you're in your kitchen, you can speak to Alexa. So for this really to work the way they want it to long term, it needs to be everywhere, on your person, in your car, all over your house, in your office. You can look at the devices they've come out with, and there's a pretty clear trend towards wearable devices in car. I mean, they're well on their way. They don't have the adoption yet, but they've at least come out with the technology.
Well, it seems like now that they've got the technology working, and it's working better and better all the time, they can install it in your car, they can install it in your phone, they can install it in your scanner. They could put it everywhere if they want to. They could put it in your oven, in your microwave. Sure. They put it in your refrigerator. Yeah. They put it everywhere. There's no reason why it can't be everywhere.
It should just live with you all the time, essentially. And that's the goal. This is a personal assistant that's, virtual personal assistant that's just with you constantly throughout your day. So the second thing is the AI needs to get better. Right now it's still a clunky sort of two-way, question and answer interface. They made a lot of improvements in the last 3 years, but they have a long way to go. They need to get it to a point where it is much more intuitive and genuinely conversational. I think that's just a matter of when, not if, based on the rate at which they're progressing, kind of the underlying AI. Third thing, and I think this one's really interesting, specifically related to commerce, are screens. So right now, most people are in a voice-only environment when they talk to the platform because they're talking to a speaker. But if you look at the devices that Amazon has rolled out more recently, a lot of them now have screens. And that really fundamentally changes the way that you can actually shop for a product, because now you can say, if you say right now to a speaker, Alexa, buy a toaster, that's a very difficult thing to do. Am I setting off your device?
I'm just double checking that I don't get a toaster tomorrow.
Yes, you're going to. So it's, is it 4 slices? Is it 2 slices? Is it Chrome? What's the price point? I mean, that's a really tough thing to do through voice only. If you have a screen, however, it'll just show you the top 5 options, which it'll do right now. And then you can just say, number 3 looks good. Buy that one. If I don't like it, I'll return it. So screens, I think, really open up a much more viable way of really shopping on the platform. And I think, frankly, without a screen, it's going to be limited from a commerce potential, because it's fine for repurchasing consumable product. You've bought the same paper towels for 10 years. You bought them every month. You know what you want. I need more. That can be done right now through voice only. But really, anything beyond that is going to be tricky without a screen.
Well, I guess it's the difference between shopping and ordering.
Yeah.
Ordering, it does very good at ordering. In fact, one of the great concerns that I have about using this device, by the way, is that I think our manners, human beings' manners, because we all talk to this little machine like it's a little dog.
Yeah.
Turn off Spotify, turn on Spotify, do this. Do we just bark out commands? And I hope we don't start talking to each other that way, because it really is kind of degrading our civilization in a certain way if we start talking to each other the way we talk to these machines.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder, it'll be interesting to see if like people get desensitized to that type of communication. I could also see the opposite happening, where right now there's sort of multiple stories about Amazon building in emotion, both Alexa's ability to perceive emotion in the human communicating with the technology, as well as present emotion back in the tonality. Because that's obviously, when we communicate verbally, it's not just about the words we say. There's so many other things going on that up until very recently, AI has had a real tough time with. But the emotional elements, as Alexa becomes more human, what'll be interesting to see is, do people actually start treating the software more like another human being?
Maybe what we need to do is suggest that the developers require the words please and thank you.
Yeah.
And then adults will kind of go back to how we were, and children will learn some good manners. So, Hey, listen, man, this has been really a great interview. This really has been the inside track on a lot of voice technology, dealing with Amazon and a lot of these type of retail concerns that so many of our our mutual clients and the kinds of people we work with have. And I really appreciate you being on the show, just because our whole goal is to help people profit from the inside. And I think you've delivered spectacularly. So thank you very much.
Great. Yeah, happy to be on.
You've been listening to Profit from the Inside with Joel Block. For more insights and to learn more, visit joelblock.com.
How about a shout out and a giant thanks to my podcast producer, David Wolf, and his team at Podcast and Radio Networks. Profit from the Inside simply wouldn't be what it is without David and his team. For more information or to learn how you can launch and produce your own podcast, reach out to podcastandradio.com.
Get the inside track on 20 top business trends for 2020 from Joel Block. Joel's insights bring Wall Street to your street so you can profit from the inside in 2020. Just text the word TREND to 72000. That's 72000 and download your free copy today. Grab your phone and get the inside track on business trends that affect you and your business. Just text the word TREND to 72000 for your copy now.